Hello guys, welcome to the channel. In the previous sessions, we were talking about the standard architecture, the software architecture, how to build the software architecture, and we also talked about the architecture levels, such as the brokers and then services and their exposures. And brokers were explained by AbdulSamad. Hi AbdulSamad, how are you doing?
Hi guys, hi everyone. Welcome to today's session.
Yeah, I invited Abdul Samad in the one of the previous sessions to explain us the brokers, one of the layers of the low-level architecture, and after that I explained the foundations and processings. And today we want to talk about the orchestration services, which is the next type of the services because like the service layer has different types such as foundation, processing for the higher logic, while the foundation for the um, just to talk to a broker. And there is one more, which is the orchestration, and the responsibility of the orchestration broker is a bit different if we compare with the foundation or with the processing. And today, our brother Abdul Samad will help us understand how the orchestration service works, why we need the orchestration service, and and so on. Okay, Abdul Samad, do you wanna start?
All right. Um, so the orchestration service is basically a higher order service, just like foundation service. But the difference between these services just depends on where they sit and their responsibility. So the orchestration service from the name it basically orchestrates two or three services, two or three foundation services or two or three processing service. So in that case, where you have super complex logic or maybe in the case where you need to talk to two different foundation services, that's the case where you need an orchestration service, basically to orchestrate between these two services. And these two services have to be two different entity services. So let's say, for example, you have a foundation service called student service, and what your endpoint is basically doing is, once maybe you want to register a student, so then you need to talk to student service first to save to the database, and after registering the students, you also then need to register them under a particular teacher or under a particular lecturer. So in that case, these are two different services you're talking to. The student service, which talk to the student entity data store, and also the teacher service. So in this case, you need something that orchestrate these two services together. So that's where an orchestration service come in, where you can call these two entity services, and it's basically going to help you orchestrate them. So to expand this, we also have something that we can talk later, maybe in further videos, which is an orchestrator of orchestrators, which is called the coordination service. So, in a nutshell, this is what orchestration service does. So, there are rules to it. So, I don't know if Zafar want to take that or he wants me to proceed on that.
Yeah, I just wanna kinda like try to understand like why do we need to create a foundation service and then like another foundation and then have an orchestration service talking to two foundations? Why don't we just have one big service calling like brokers, why don't we nest
Yeah.
everything in one service under
Well,
under one method?
Yeah, well, so the thing is there are different responsibilities of these different layers. So if you think about it, the foundation service basically you only want the foundation service to be closer to the broker, which basically wraps the external services, right? And this is that layer where you also want to filter the external models from your local models, and you're going to be doing a lot of that and doing some conversion at the foundation service. And so then also there is this principle every software developer wants to abide by, which is the solid principle. And the S there says single responsibility principle. So you want to have a service just do one, be responsible for just one particular step
Mhm.
or one particular responsibility. So in that case, this foundation services, the only thing it does is basically a layer that interfaces with the broker and also interface with the external service. Then it's that same layer, and that same layer you also want to do your conversion from external model to internal model. This is just the responsibility. Now you also want to ensure your foundation service is only handling just one entity. So it's just part of the rules that you have to abide by. So it doesn't get super complex for that particular area. It should be simple, and it should
Yeah.
only handle just one particular entity. Right? So every foundation service should only handle one particular service. So then if you then need to it then means if you say every service is going to handle just one entity, and you have a scenario where your endpoint wants to talk to multiple services. That's you want to talk to the student service, which stores your registers the student, and you also want to talk to the teacher service, which basically registers the student under that teacher. In that case, it doesn't then make sense to do this at the foundation service, because basically single responsibility principle, it should only handle one thing, and it should only be an entity, just a single entity service. In that case, that's where an orchestration service comes in. So there
Mhm.
are rules to orchestration service. It also can only handle, can only talk to two or three. So it can't talk to more than
Yeah.
two, sorry, more than three, and it can't talk to lower than two. So basically, this is the
Mhm.
difference between an orchestration service and
Yeah.
foundation service.
Yeah, just to give an idea what AbdulSamad is talking about is that imagine a scenario like the programming is not just you go and add a student, right? It's not just one shot, it's not one flow. It's the same like building a complex building, right? You don't build like it's not that straightforward. There are many things which needs to be connected to each other, like work together, right? Even if you look at um, if we look like the sun and the moon and this earth, how they are connected and they are working together, right? Without one thing, like the whole thing can break. So same in the software engineering, there are many things can happen under the hood, and we don't have only one straightforward flows. For example, let's say we have a scenario where we want to add a student to the database, right? Under a specific teacher, right? Under a specific teacher. So which means that the a student is going to come with the teacher ID. Before adding that student, we need to validate the teacher exists. So in order to validate the teacher exists, we need to call a foundation service and retrieve the teacher by ID. So this is the first flow. And the second flow is basically add the student, right? So even just for us to be able to add a student to the database, we will need to verify the teacher exists, right? So we are already having two calls here, which means we will need to call like two services, the teacher service and then the student service. So in this case, we will need a service, right, to make this job, because this is not the responsibility of the foundation service, right, or the responsibility of the processing service, because processing service can talk only to one entity service, like for to the foundation, right? It cannot call two different foundations, for example a student foundation and a teacher foundation. So this is the job of the orchestration service. So this is basically what Abdul Samad was explaining. that in the software engineering, in the programming, you may face like different architectural issues, and you may have uh, like different logics, right, which need to be implemented in a proper way. So if you basically go ahead and like use the orchestration service, your architecture is going to be much more simpler, and it's basically going to solve your problem. I can. Do you think I should quickly share my screen and like show how it looks,
Yeah,
Abdusamad? Like specifically
yeah.
this example. Let me share my
Um,
screen quickly. Let me know if you can see my screen.
um, yes.
Okay, so basically what Abdusamad was talking about is, let's say we have a here a teacher, right? A teacher flow, and then we have a student flow, right? Student flow. It can be even the microservices. For example, we may have a teacher microservice and then a student microservice. And for us to be able to fetch the data from the teacher microservice, right? So, and then later on perform some actions with the student, we will need to orchestrate these two entities, right? So we will need to have something in between them, something in between doing the orchestration. So this is going to be the uh, orchestrator, right? Which is going to call the teacher first, and after that call the student. So like this is how it looks. And the orchestrator can have up to three services. So it basically can talk to the three microservices or to the three services, right? So for example, we can say teacher in here group, and this one is the student. Abdusamad, I have a question, brother. Like
Yep.
you told that the orchestration service or the orchestration microservice, right? That they can talk to two or three, right? Not less than two and not more than three. Like, do you think like can you tell us the reason? What is the reason behind this?
Yeah, so I think the reason is actually not to make things complex because if you think about it, what the orchestration service is basically doing is actually a higher order logic, which a lot of time is complex in itself because you want to orchestrate between multiple services. And if you are doing a lot of this logic, right, you're talking to more than three, it gets too complex. And the standard
Yes.
basically want to make things super simple and super direct. So when things are getting this complex, what we basically do is we find out abide by these rules, which is if you have more than three services you need to talk to, then what you can do is you have to break these services down into separate orchestration service. So in
Yes.
this case, if you have four services, an orchestration service is handles two, the other one handles two. So if you look at it, the different layers, you would see that you basically simplify things, and that way it's not going to get super complex. And because when code gets super complex, it gets messy and super hard to read. So I
Yeah.
think that's one of the major reasons behind it.
So what Abdul Samad is saying basically, what if we have, let's say, let's say director here, right? Director here. Let me use a different color. Um, yeah. What if we have a director? So you're saying that we cannot have this scenario, right? Where an orchestration uh can like where the orchestration is talking to four services, four entities, right? So in this
Yeah,
case, your suggestion is basically to go and create an orchestration for the director and teacher, and then
yeah,
one more orchestration for the group and students, right? Let me do that
yeah,
quickly. So it's basically gonna be something like, let me call this, let's say director orchestration, right? And this one is group orchestration. Okay. So the director is basically gonna talk to the director and the teacher, and the group to the group and the student. Okay,
yeah,
this looks good. Instead of kind of going and nesting like 4, 5, up to 10, services entities under one service, I think this is like the best approach where we have
yeah,
multiple orchestration services, right? If our
yeah,
logic becomes complex. And this is actually nice because, like, if you're working in a big team, right? So you're making things easy for your basically team members, your colleagues, right? So they don't have to go to one big single file and just try to understand what's going on, right?
yeah,
Yeah, so I think like this is the whole point of the orchestration service. Like Abdulsamad was talking that, like, what do we do in this case? Do we go and how do we orchestrate these things, right? We want to have a
yeah,
logic like from this place, right? Let's say do something with the director, uh, and then basically go and insert the group and student, right? How do we connect these things together? Do we call
yeah.
them like in one controller or in the exposure? But our exposure cannot have like two services again, right? So what do we do in this case, Abdul Samad?
Yeah, so if you think about it from the perspective of the responsibilities of an orchestration service, so the main responsibility is basically to orchestrate between um, two or more services. All right. So if you think about it,
Yes.
what we also want to do here is now we have two higher order services, which are
Mm-hmm.
orchestrations services, right? We have direct orchestration and orchestration. We then want to talk to these two services. What we want to do is we also want to orchestrate between them. So, but in this
Mm-hmm.
case, we are not going to call it orchestration service. So we have orchestrators of orchestration, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's called the coordination service. So this is where the coordination service comes in place. It basically orchestrate between orchestration service. So it's going to sit between the two layers. And the coordination service also has rules, which is also because it's in itself it's an orchestration service. So you can also talk to two or three service.
Mm-hmm.
That's for the coordination service. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I see what you're saying. So basically, like for us, uh, let me fix the color. To be able to orchestrate orchestration services, right? If we really have a super big logic, we need to go and create the coordination one, right? So basically, this is probably gonna be like director coordination service, for example, right? And I would like to like clarify on something, like correct me, Abdulsamad. So as far as I understand, like having this proper naming, right? Let's say foundation services, right? And then the orchestration services. And then here we have a coordination. Is just for us to make our project structure, like, and basically our logic, our architecture simpler, right? And make it easier for others to understand. Like, do you agree with me? Like so far, based what
Yeah.
I have learned, like instead
Yeah.
of having, let's say, one folder called services and then you have thousand services, right? Better we basically go and say foundations, orchestrations, coordinations, and even though why do we call it coordination? Just So we know that this coordination talks to orchestration, so that we
yeah,
understand how complex our system is, right? What do you think about this? So, uh, I think I cannot hear you.
yeah. So, sorry, can you repeat that question?
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, I basically was talking about the naming, right? The naming and the levels. Uh, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah.
think.
No.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, what I was talking is just I was telling that the foundation and the orchestration, the coordination, like the reason we are calling them in this way, the reason that the standard presents them in this way, so it's easier to understand your
Yeah.
architecture, your project structure, the complexity of your project, right? So for example, if you
Yeah.
have a folder called coordinations in your project, it means that there is something complex and you understand that this coordination is talking to orchestration services, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I was saying, so instead of having a folder called services and then you have like 100, like 1,000 services, this approach kind of looks better to me. What do you
Yeah,
think?
it does. It does basically. Basically, even if you look at it from the architecture point of view, you see these things are perfectly separated and perfectly structured, and all basically at the end
Yeah.
of the day, each services are as simple as it gets. Because if you think about it,
Yes.
imagine all this logic we abstracted into this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into these um seven services. Now imagine having it in just one
Yeah.
single service. Imagine how
Yes.
super complex and how super hard it is to read, and you
Yes.
spend more time trying to understand, oh, this one does this one does this. So it becomes super complex, and there are technical depth to
Yes.
this. Yeah, so that's basically the idea, and this is why we do the
Yeah.
things we do in the standard.
Yeah. Look, we have a coordination series, but what if we have two coordination services? Like, actually, I remember when we were working in some projects with AbdulSamad, we had a lot of like complexity we were given, uh, like a tasks, were very complex tasks, and we used to end up to having multiple coordination services, right? And imagine managing those coordinations. So, like, maybe you can tell us ab- about something higher than the coordination, Abdul.
Yeah, so I think the next service on top of that is basically the aggregation service. Basically, this aggregates between several services. Yeah, so that's the aggregation service. Yeah.
I think you forgot. Before the
Oh, really?
aggregation, there is one series, and the
Okay,
name is
okay.
the
Yeah.
management.
Oh, really? Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
That's true. That's true.
the
That's true.
management service.
The
So
management service.
basically,
Yeah.
yeah, let me go back. Let me reshare my screen. So let's say we end up having basically in this situation, right? So I hope you can see my screen where we have
Yeah.
like we really may have one endpoint doing all of these things, like doing all of these things, calling all of these services and the endpoints, right? We may have in the
Yeah.
programming, in the software engineering, you may have even bigger. So in this case, we are going to create a service called
The management.
management. This is the management, which is going to basically talk to the director coordination and the second, uh, no, this one is the director and yeah. Anyways, so basically director management, right? I remember Hassan Habib, if you remember that talk, he was saying if you're going beyond the management, then something is wrong with your architecture. Like
Yeah.
what do you think? Why did he say this?
Yeah, yeah, I think it just means your your service shouldn't get too complex
Yeah,
that you wouldn't have broken it down between these lower services. If it gets way too complex for than that, then it means you are really doing something wrong. Yeah.
yeah, makes sense. Yes, definitely. Having a management is it's normal, but going beyond it, I think it really can make like that the logic itself very complex. Instead, there are different solutions, right? If you wanna kind of manage between like 10 or 15 services, you can do the event callbacks, right? Doing the event-driven architecture. But this is a different topic. Today we discuss the orchestration service. Like the coordination is the same as the orchestration, the management is the same as the orchestration. Just they're managing, they're orchestrating different types of the services, right? So,
Yep.
in the same way, we are doing the validation and the exception handling for the foundation, for the processing. We do the same thing for the orchestration service. And what else? Everything is quite simple, right? When you feel that you're going to call multiple instances, multiple services, just think about the orchestration service, right? That this service is going to
Yep.
solve the problem. If you want to go more, if you want to have more orchestration services and you want to orchestrate them, think about the coordination service. And if you want to create more coordinations and then coordinate them, the management service. And going beyond the management is not the best idea, right? Making it super complex. So probably you can start going to and check the event-driven architecture. Hopefully, we can talk with Abdulsamad and the event-driven architecture. I love this type of the architecture because it really makes your like it really makes your big architecture where you're possibly maybe calling like 20 30 services very simple, very straightforward, and yeah, basically we will talk about event driven and other architectures with Abdul Samad. Do you want to say something? Do you have anything to say, Abdul Samad, before we end up this
Yep.
session? Okay, thank you very much, brother Abdul Samad, for your time and for sharing the
Thank you very
knowledge
much.
with people. And thank you very much, guys. If you liked our session, please share, subscribe, and don't forget to like. See you soon. Bye bye.
Bye.